Thank you all for coming out so early. My name is Joe Fee from Fee Brothers. My sister and I are the fourth generation in my family to produce cocktail mixes and cocktail bitters. Standing right here is Duncan Hayter of High Spirits. He is our representative here in Europe. He also speaks many languages, so if there's something in particular you don't understand, ask him.
I speak proper English.
We will be up on the second floor, one floor up, and can answer any questions at our booth, as well as having tastings all day long. Okay, so why bitters? Why in the name of God would anybody willingly put something called bitters into a cocktail and hope for a good outcome? I had to shorten that down to why bitters. It's important that we make a distinction between aperitif bitters and flavoring bitters. So we got to go back a little bit. There was a German doctor named Johann Gottlieb Benjamin Siegert, and he was fighting in the Prussian army in the Napoleonic Wars. When that whole campaign came to an end, he moved to Venezuela, where he joined the Liberation Army of Simon Bolivar. Well, Simon stationed him in a town called Angostura, Venezuela, which is now called Ciudad de Bolivar. So he's treating various patients, broken bones, bullet wounds, whatever, but also some stomach ailments, probably malaria. And his problem was those patients had no appetite. He needed to get them to eat. They weren't hungry. They were dying on him. Well, he's a European. He's used to having an aperitif bitter like Fernet Branca or, God forbid, Jägermeister. I had too much of that in college. And so, yes. But he didn't have anything like that down there to stimulate appetite. So he started to make his own, essentially. He would extract things: ginger, clove, cinnamon, Angostura bark. Angostura bark, the Angostura plant, I'm still not clear whether it's a bush or a tree, but anyway, it went on the endangered species list in 2013, so up until then we used it, but we can't, so we use quassia instead. Anyway, so he extracts all these different things, and when you extract these things, you get a very concentrated flavor. And concentrated flavors taste bitter. Think vanilla extract. You taste vanilla extract straight, it tastes bitter. You use it properly, it's perfect, So he would give a tablespoon of this to his malaria patients, and it churned up their digestive juices, and they got hungry, and they started to eat, and they started getting better. Yay! So here's where we have to do a little supposition. We have to use our imagination. He's in his tent one night, He's got some of the local hooch, and God only knows what it tasted like. So he's probably a couple into it, one night. And he's, well, it's good for the patients. Let's see. And he puts a couple dashes into his hooch, and it wound up tasting better. It tasted aromatic. What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, more balanced. Anyways, it tasted better to him. So he started bottling it and calling it Amargo Ameritico. And then he died. So his brother and his son moved the company to Trinidad, where they renamed the company Angostura Bitters. Now, how did Fee Brothers get involved in all this? Well, This is Owen, John, James, and Joseph. John is my great-grandfather. Unfortunately, when you take his picture and you shrink it down and you stitch it, he comes out looking like Saddam Hussein. We didn't know till we got the shirts and looked at him and said, oh, looks like Saddam Hussein. James here signed a lease on March 5th of 1864. We still have the original lease preserved for a storefront in downtown Rochester, New York, on one of the busiest four corners of the city. And he sold cigars and produce and millinery goods, and he sold wine and liquor, and he started importing wine and liquor from all over the world. We even had the Bacardi distribution in the city for a while. I'd like that back, but no. So eventually he gave up the storefront and just became a wine and liquor distributor. Opened his own winery. Now we're getting into generation number 2, John Jr. And he was distributing wine and liquor, and then along came Prohibition, that despicable period in my country's history. So we had to give up the liquor, but we had the wine, and we had the winery. We were selling wines to priests for sacramental use. It was amazing how many different varieties of wine we were selling to priests for sacramental use. And the quantities. I think maybe the priests were selling the bottles to the parishioners to, raise a little money for the church. God bless them. But a lot of the illegal liquor that was being served during that period was sketchy, not necessarily good. So my grandfather, John Jr., started making flavors to dress up illegal liquor. So we had a Bacardi type flavor, Benedictine type, cognac type. We even had a creme de mint cordial syrup that you could add to the liquor, because creme de mint was a very popular cordial at the time. So then, and he was doing pretty well with it. Prohibition comes to an end, and he got back into the commercial production of wine for, for the public. But it was not fun anymore. Each state in the United States has its own liquor laws that are left over from just after Prohibition. So the state of New York made it just very difficult for him. Plus there were a lot of people that had a lot of money that jumped into the industry. He wasn't having any fun anymore. So he decides to drop the wine and stick with the non-alcoholic stuff. And then he died, leaving my grandmother, who was not much of a businesswoman, to run the business. It wasn't her thing. My father was schooled in chemistry. His college degree was chemistry, and he was working for Eastman Kodak at the time. And he would come back at night and make up the batches for her. It was a smaller company, he could do that. He found my grandfather's recipe book. The problem was, the recipes were written in code. So it said things like, take a scoop of Xmas. Well, what the hell is Xmas? And which scoop? Is it mounded or is it leveled? You guys have the TV show The Big Bang Theory over here? You know who Sheldon is? To a great extent, my dad was Sheldon. So you can imagine that not having specifics was very difficult for him. Well, he was able to save about 5 or 6 products from what was probably like 35. And one of them was the orange bitters. Actually, the orange bitters got made first. And then he developed another 50, 55 products. Now my sister, who is my partner, has developed another 60, 65 some odd products. Some of them have gone away. They weren't all hits. We just said, yeah, stop making that. So my father and my mother passed away in 2015, 38 days apart from each other after nearly 68 years of marriage. I guess they say it goes that way sometimes. And my sister and I are doing it now. So, why bitters? Well, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. You're all in the industry. You got taste receptors in your mouth. Salty, sour, sweet, bitter. I don't understand the umami. I'm sorry, I just don't. But let's just call those 4. If you ignore one taste receptor, the others feel a little out of sorts. So it's sort of like setting the equalizer on your stereo to get the right balance of sound. It's the same concept with a cocktail. And so just a dash or 2 in a drink. In the United States, our product is considered non-alcoholic. It's non-potable. Over here, well, governments want their tax revenue, so they consider it an alcohol. All right, fine, as long as we're all on the same playing field. It should be noted that each one of these bottles is hand-labeled, rolled on the thighs of Italian virgins. No. It's actually done in a sheltered workshop for developmentally disabled people, but that just doesn't sound as interesting, you know. Let's be honest. I'm running off my presentation here. There are a number of different flavors here. Some of these have historical roots from pre-Prohibition. Cherry bitters, certainly orange bitters, even celery bitters was produced pre-Prohibition. But when Prohibition came along, they kind of went into hiding. We had to sort of bring them back. We do have a couple different bitters that we age in barrels. So the basic aromatic bitters, which is directly comparable to Angostura, has a little more of a cinnamon note to it. We age that in whiskey barrels, freshly emptied whiskey barrels for a year. So this is a limited edition thing. The orange bitters we age in gin barrels. There's a particular gin out of Oregon in the States called Ransom Gin. It's really good gin. And they age their gin for a year in the barrels. It gets a nice caramely color on it, picks up oaky notes in the char. It's really good gin.